Hi students, how are you all? Yes, class. How are you all? How is your weekend going on? Is it audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's start with our very first chapter in botany, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Hope you all can see the screen and my voice is audible.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है. So all flowering plants show sexual reproduction. Flowers are the sites of sexual reproduction, isn't it? Have you studied this in the 11th standard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about others? There are several hormonal and structural changes which result in differentiation and development for floral primordium. Inflorescence bear the floral buds and then flowers. First we'll have the buds, then flower blooms. This is called as pre-fertilization. We'll talk about pre-fertilization. Okay. A flower has two parts, that is androecium and gynoecium. Okay. The male reproductive part is called as androecium. It has, what do you think androecium has? Which all parts? Tell me. You have studied in 11th standard, right? So androecium में क्या क्या है? The male part is also called as stamen, which includes anther and filament. ये दिख रहा है आपको?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. This is the anther, and जो डंडा जैसा है, that is the filament. And this one is the female part. ठीक है, female में क्या क्या है? ऊपर The area is called as stigma. ये जो support करते हैं from ovary to stigma is called as style. And this is the ovary. ठीक है. It consists.
Yes, ma'am.
So androecium, it has a wall of stamens. Their number and length are variable in different species. So you see the flower. Flower में corolla है, जो petals है, that is corolla, and जो सेपल करके है, छोटा सा leaf जैसा. It is not leaf, but जो flower के immediate नीचे छोटा सा leaf दिख रहा है, that is called as sepal. It is also called as corolla. Petal can also be called as corolla, and sepal can also be called as calyx. And when you say when petal and sepal joins or it becomes one, उसका example is tulip. तो उसको क्या नाम बोलते हैं? It is called as perianth. When sepal and petal is one, that name is called as perianth. And for the example of perianth is tulip. When petal and sepal are same. ठीक है. So parts of a stamen. Stamen क्या है? It is a, what is stamen?
Male part.
Male reproductive part में, ठीक, इसको androecium बोलते हैं, and it has two parts, that is anther and filament. We'll talk about filament. ठीक है. Filament is a long and slender stalk. Why it is long? इसका इतना बड़ा length क्यों दिया है? So that it can move. When it moves, उसका जो spores है, it can fall onto the female reproductive part. ठीक है. Its proximal end is attached to the thalamus or the petal of the flower. What is thalamus? जो एकदम base है, base का एक part है. When the proximal end is attached to the thalamus or the petal of a flower, the filament is attached to the proximal end. Thalamus के नीचे, thalamus के वहाँ attach होता है, that is filament. So anther. Next is anther. Anther is typically bilobe. Bilobe मतलब it has two lobes. ठीक है. Each lobe has two diathecous मतलब two coverings. Diathecous मतलब covering होता है. So it means that, see, this is anther, right? This is what? Filament. And it is, and the anther is bilobe, they are saying. So this is one lobe, this is the second lobe, and two lobes are connected by something. What is that something? This is called as connective. When you say, for example, when you want to have bread and jam, you take a bread, you paste the jam on top of one slice of bread, and you put the second slice of bread. ठीक है. So it doesn't move away. Bread or bread दोनों साथ में खाएंगे तो it doesn't get, connected, right? Adhesive नहीं है उसमें. So इसमें similarly in plants the adhesive thing is connective. Two lobes of anther को connect करने के लिए there is one adhesive named as connective. The anther has 4 microsporangia located at the corners, 2 in each lobe. So this is the anther. So this is the anther. ठीक है. The filament, the anther. So they have transversed it. They have cut into two to show us, to make us understand how it looks. So it has 4 microsporangia. मतलब ऐसा है 1, 2, 3, 4. So like this we can see 2 lobes है, that is this first lobe, second lobe. Each lobe में 2 microsporangia है 1, 2, 3, 4. ठीक है, understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Then the microsporangia further develops to pollen sac. ठीक है, माइक्रोस्पोरेंजिया के अंदर क्या है? It develops into pollen sac. So a typical microsporangia is near circular in outline. It is surrounded by 4 wall layers. So ये anther है, ठीक है? We are talking about anther. Anther has 4 microsporangium. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each sporangium is covered by layers, different layers. ये देखो 1, 2, 3, 4 layers यहाँ रह गए. Similarly here there will be layers. Similarly over here. Similarly here also. So what are they? They are epidermis, endothecium, middle layer, and tapetum. So epidermis matlab the ekdam outermost covering. The outer 3 layers give protection and help in dehiscence of anther to release the pollen. That means epidermis is the outermost covering. उसके नीचे आएगा endothecium. Then middle layers will form. Then एकदम अंदर में रहेगा tapetum. ठीक है. And the first 3 layers, that is epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, gives a protection and help in dehiscence of anther. Dehiscence of anther मतलब bursting of pollens. ठीक है. फटना when it bursts, that is called as dehiscence of anther. So see, they are given in more detailed way. So epidermis is the outer layer, endothecium उसके नीचे का जो है, middle layers जो है उसके भी नीचे, and tapetum एकदम near to the microspore mother cell. These are mother cells. ठीक है, from where pollens come out from here and burst it. यहाँ से बाहर निकलते हैं. Okay. So tapetum is the innermost layer which nourishes the developing pollen grain. इसके अंदर pollen grain develop होता है, isn't it? Anther के अंदर pollen grain gets developed. So tapetum is the one which nourishes the pollen grain. Cells of the tapetum contain dense cytoplasm and generally have more than one nucleus. ये छोटे छोटे डॉट्स दिख रहे हैं आपको, बहुत एक मदर सेल्स में बहुत सारे डॉट्स दिख रहे हैं. That is the cytoplasm and it has more than one nucleus. Each microsporangium has porogenous tissue at the center. It is arranged in homogeneous diploid cell. So as the anther develops, each sporogenous cell undergoes meiotic divisions to form microspore tetrads. Microspore arranged in a cluster of 4 cells. The formation of microspores from a pollen mother cell through meiosis is called spirosporogenesis. pollen grain. Pollen grain is generally spherical and उसका size है 25 to 50 mm in diameter. It is surrounded by a plasma membrane and it is a two-layered wall which has exine and intine. This is a pollen grain. एकदम अंदर वाला चीज है. So exine is a hard outer layer made up of sporopollen, highly resistant organic material. So exine tapetum, what releases sporopollen? How it is formed? It is formed from tapetum. Tapetum is what we learned. It is the innermost covering. Where was it? 4 walls है ना. माइक्रोस्पोरेंजियम को कवर करने के लिए देयर वर 4 लेयर्स. एकदम अंदर वाला लेयर है टेपेटम. तो वहां से स्पाइरोपोलेन इज फॉर्म. So the hard outer layer made up of sporopollen, it is highly resistant in organic material. It can withstand high temperature and strong acids and alkali, and enzymes cannot degrade sporopollen. See, this is the pollen grain. You can see जो thorns जैसे दिख रहे हैं, that is the exine one, and जो groove जैसे दिख रहा है, a U-shaped groove, that is called as germ pores. Exine has apertures called germ pores where sporopollen is absent. So groove जैसे दिख रहा है, that is called as germ spore where sporopollen is absent. We are talking about the outer covering of pollen grain. That is exine, exit. Exine, exit. ऐसे याद रखना. Pollen grains are preserved as fossils due to the presence of sporopollen. Exine exhibits patterns and designs. The next we'll talk about intine, inside. This is the inner wall of pollen grain. It is a thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. This is the one we are talking about, intine. It is made up of a thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. So, a matured pollen grain contains 2 cells. A matured pollen grain contains 2 cells, that is vegetative cell and generative cell. Vegetative cell is big and it has abundant of food reserve and generally irregular in shape. ठीक है, vegetative cell, it also makes pollen tube which has generative cell. ठीक है, pollen grain has 2 cells. A matured pollen grain will have 2 cells, that is vegetative and generative. Vegetative is very big and has abundant of food reserve, and it makes pollen tube which will further have 2 generative cells. Vegetative gives food, generative it makes what? It is the next generation. It gives rise to the next generation. Whereas vegetative, it does not give rise to next generation, but it is useful in food reserve. So when the vegetative cell makes a pollen tube, which further makes 2 generative cells, then pollen tube के अंदर गैमेट होते हैं, 2 गैमेट होते हैं, उसको क्या बोलते हैं? साइफोगैमी। ठीक है। Then the generative cell, it is small and floats in cytoplasm. It flows in cytoplasm of vegetative cell. It is a spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm and nucleus. It has nucleus. ठीक है. Over 60% angiosperm shed their pollen grains at 2-cell stage and 3-cell stage. So we will talk about 2-cell stage and 3-cell stage. Mother cell, first, mother cell, that is 2N, forms male gametes through meiosis. And when the male gametes are formed, it forms 2-cell pollen grain through mitosis, that is one vegetative cell and one generative cell. Then again, after mitosis, pollen grain is formed by one vegetative cell and two generative, G1 and G2. That is called 3-cell stage. Okay, first the mother cell, through meiosis, it forms male gametes. Then from them, through mitosis, 2-cell stage is formed, that is one vegetative and one generative. Then again, it will form another grape and another pollen, that is called as through mitosis only, one vegetative and two generative cell, that is 3-cell stage, that becomes 3-cell stage. So a pollen grain, the shed pollen grains have to land on stigma before they lose their viability. The viability period of pollen grain is variable. It depends on temperature and humidity. While viability means the time period when the spore is still attached on the surface of stigma. How long it gets attached. The viability of pollen grains of some cereals such as rice, wheat is 30 minutes. It stays for 30 minutes. Some members of leguminous, Rosaceae and Solanaceae have a viability for months. It stays for longer period. The pollen grains are rich in nutrients. There are also pollen tablets available in the market used as food supplements. Pollen tablets and syrups increase the performance of athletes and race horses. They are stored for years in the liquid nitrogen, that is minus 196 degree. Pollen grains of some plants such as Parthenium are allergic to some people, which lead to asthma and bronchitis. So this we talked about anther and filament. You want me to repeat again?
Yes, ma'am. Once I revised from the first one.
Sure. Yes. So this is the flower. A flower has two parts, that is androsia, male reproductive part, and Dienesia, that is female reproductive part. So male reproductive part of the flower is called as androsia. It consists of stamen and and stamen has anther and filament. So this is the flower we are talking about. It has androecium, that means male part, which is this. This is the male part which has anther, and the long elongated one is called as filament. Okay, and it has female reproductive part, which is Dienesia, which has some parts named as stigma, style, filament, and all three parts, and ovary. Ovary is the main part, and all three parts together is called as pistil or carpel. This is the female reproductive part. This is the male reproductive part. These are the male and the female reproductive part are essential part of a flower, and non-essential part of a flower is the petal, that is the colorful floral petals that we see. They are only to attract pollinators. Okay, and a sepal. Sepal is also called as calyx. So when there for some flowers we have petal and sepal, which are same. There's only one thing, that is petal. Petal and sepal joins together. That is called as perianth. The example for perianth is tulip. So petal and sepal are non-essential part of a flower. So the petal, or it is also called as corolla, they are made of, they are chromo. Chromo means colorful. And sepal jo hai green, this part, this is chlorophyll related. So it is called as chlorophyll related part. So these two are non-essential part of a flower, that is petal and sepal. The essential part of a flower are androecium and gynoecium. So androecium, we were talking about anther. Androecium has stamen, which further it is further divided into anther and filament. Stamen has two parts, that is anther and filament. Filament is a long elongated part, and anther is bilobed. It has two lobes, and the two lobes are connected via adhesive known as connective. So bilobe may, each lobe has microsporangia, two microsporangia. We said about stamen, which stamen parts are filament and anther. Filament is a long, elongated, sleek stalk. Its proximal end is attached to the thalamus or the petal of a flower. We are talking about anther. It is typically bilobe. Two lobes, that means it has two lobes. It is also called as ditake, this matlab two coverings. Often and longitudinal groove runs lengthwise, separating the pupa. So we talked about two lobes of an anther, and each lobe has two microsporangia. In total, it has four microsporangia located at the corners. The anther is tetragonal. It has four corners structure consisting of four microsporangia located at the corners. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 in each lobe. This is one lobe, this is other lobe. And both the lobes are connected by an adhesive known as, what is the adhesive name? Adhesive just now I mentioned, that is connective. See, it is mentioned here, connective. Two lobes, anther के दो लोब है, Okay, dear. Yeah, so we were talking about anther. We're basically talking about stamen, the main reproductive part of a flower, which has two parts, that is anther and filament. Okay. Filament is the long elongated one, and anther is bilobe, isn't it? So two lobes are connected by which thing? What is the thing between which connects the two lobes of anther? Tell me. What is the
Connectivity.
correct connective? It is called as connective. Okay, good. And each lobe has microsporangiae. Okay, each lobe has microsporangiae, two microsporangiae in each lobe. Total, it has 4 microsporangiae located at the corner of anther. It develops into a pollen sac later on. Okay, and each microsporangia is covered by different layers of protective layers. 4 different layers of protective layers. Here also, for 4 microsporangia, it has 4 different covers. They are epidermis, which is the outermost cover, and it is very thin. The outermost cover is very thin. That is called as epidermis. The outer एकदम बाहर वाला जो है microsporangia का, that is called as epidermis. Endo मतलब epidermis के नीचे वाला, the endothecium, inside covering. का मतलब covering. ठीक है. का मतलब covering, endothecium. The middle layer, उसके नीचे आएगा middle layers, and उसके भी नीचे आएगा tapetum. So endothecium is the one which is hygroscopic in nature, which means it absorbs water. Endothecium absorbs water, so it is called as hygroscopic. It is also a fibrous layer due to the presence of thick fibrous thickenings. Epidermis is the outermost layer which has thin layer. उसके नीचे वाला है endothecium. This is hygroscopic in nature, which means it absorbs water and it is thick. ऊपर वाला जो है thin है, नीचे वाला जो है thick है. Endothecium is a fibrous layer which has fibrous layer, and also it is hygroscopic in nature, which absorbs water. Why it is absorbing water? That is because in order to burst, the pollen grains will be bursted in the end. So they are getting trained. It has U-shaped thickening. Endothecium has U-shaped thickening. Okay. So next we'll talk about middle layer. Middle layer is the one which forms or which makes food. Middle layer is the one which makes food. That is also called as parenchymatic cell, which helps in photosynthesis in order to make food. Middle layer makes food. Okay. And the next one, tapetum. Tapetum, you can say they are the Hitler among these 4. It is the Hitler which takes everything and passes on to the where it passes. It passes
Next year.
Sorry, I didn't get you. So tapetum is the one which absorbs all the food. It is a gunda person which absorbs all the food and provides nourishment to the cells which is there inside. It is lipid. It is rich in lipid. Okay. And it secretes enzyme which degrades other cells. So we talked about four wall layers of microsporangium, that is epidermis, which is thin, endothelium, which is thick, and it has U-shaped thickenings, middle layers which makes food, and tapetum is the one which nourishes.
Absorbs food.
Tapetum is the one which nourishes the developing pollen grains. The innermost layer, एकदम अंदर वाला layer, which nourishes, which takes food from the middle layer and nourishes the developing pollen grain. Middle layer क्या बनाता है? It makes food. It is also called as parenchymatic. Parenchymatic cell helps in making food, the middle layer. Then tapetum, the fourth layer, it snatches the food from the middle layer and nourishes the developing pollen grain. Okay. In the young anther, the cells of the tapetum contain dense cytoplasm. It has dense cytoplasm and have more than one nucleus. In young anther, each microsporangium has sporogenous tissue. At the center, it consists of compactly arranged homogeneous diploid cells, sporogenous cell. This is the जो है एकदम अंदर वाला circle, बड़ा वाला circle, that is called as sporogenous tissue. At the center. And it has what cell? Diploid cells, homogeneous diploid cells. You can see epidermis, then endothelium, then uske andar ka middle layer, then tapetum. Uske andar there are pollen grains which are getting prepared. So the middle layer gives food to the tapetum and tapetum gives it to the pollen grain for their nourishment. Okay, and inside the sporangium, there is a sporogenous tissue at the center, which consists of diploid cell. It has diploid cell, sporogenous tissue. As the anther develops, each sporogenous cell, that is the mother cell, you can call it as microspore or the mother pollen cell, undergoes meiotic division to form microspore tetrads. Okay. So through meiosis, it forms tetrads, microspore tetrads, arranged in a cluster of 4 cells. So the formation of microspore from a pollen mother cell through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. As I already mentioned about the mother cell, it forms male gametes, that is the 4 microspore tetrads. This is the mother cell. It forms tetrad through meiosis. Then after that, it forms a cell where vegetative and generative two-cell stage appears. Then through further mitosis, it forms one vegetative cell and two generative cells. So the formation of microspores from the mother cell through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. So इसके अंदर में जो है they are mother cells जो which are diploid. ठीक है 2n. It has 2n. So mother cells which are diploid through meiosis it forms microspore tetra. Microspore tetrad form होता है. The mother cells form microspore tetra through meiosis. Okay. इसके बाद क्या होता है? As the anther matures, they dehydrate and the microspore dissociate from each other and develop into individual pollen grains. पहले कैसा था? एक साथ था. Everything was together. And what is the connecting thing? The connecting thing, it gets dehydrated, doesn't appear after some time. That means it gets mature and it dehydrates and the microspore dissociate from each other and develops into individual एक करके pollen grains बनाता है. So each microsporangium contains thousands of pollen grains. They are released with the dehiscence of anther. Dehiscence मतलब फटना, to burst. Dehiscence means to burst. They get released with the dehiscence of anther. So this is the one which I was talking about. Mother cell which forms tetrad through meiosis, microspore tetrad through meiosis. Then through mitosis it forms cell which has vegetative cell and degenerative cell. Then again mitosis occur, it forms one vegetative and two generative cell. These are the mothers, these are pollen grains. ये फटा हुआ है, it is a mature dehisced anther. ठीक है. And it gets, the pollen grains get bursted out. And it goes and attached to the female part of the flower, that is pistil. Pistil में exactly कहाँ आके रुकता है? That is on stigma. It gets attached to stigma part of pistil. Okay, so we are in male reproductive organ only. So male androecium, male gametophyte में it has two-layered wall. A pollen grain has two-layered wall. That is exine and intine. So this is a pollen grain. Pollen grain, through mitosis, it became vegetative cell and generative cell. And further, this is the two-celled stage. And further mitosis के बाद it becomes three-cell stage where there will be two generative cell and one vegetative cell. So a pollen grain has two-layered wall, that is exine, which is the outermost layer, and intine, which is the innermost layer. Outermost layer is made up of sporopollenin, and sporopollenin is released by tapetum. Remember, tapetum is the outermost covering. Sorry, the innermost covering. Okay. Tapetum is the one which releases sporopollenin, and for pollen grain, the hard outer layer is made up of sporopollenin, which is highly resistant organic material. It can withstand high temperature and strong acids and alkali. Enzymes cannot degrade sporopollenin. Enzyme has a picture called as germ spore. This is like thorn-like structureless enzyme, and there are some groove-shaped or sorry U-shaped apertures, which is germ spore, which is free from sporopollen. So pollen grains are preserved as fossil due to the presence of sporopollen. It exhibits patterns and designs. Intine is the inner wall and it is thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. This pollen grain, it has exine and intine, and intine is made up of cellulose and pectin. A matured pollen grain has two cells. A pollen grain has two cells. That is vegetative cell, which is big and has abundant food reserve and has an irregular shaped nucleus. See, you can see the nucleus, and a generative cell which helps in next generation. Vegetative cell is for making food and reserving food, and generative cell is for next generation. It is small. It floats in cytoplasm of vegetative cell. It is spindle shaped and with dense cytoplasm and a nucleus. So over 60% of angiosperms shed their pollen grains at two-celled stage. In other, that is other next 40%, which generative cell divides mitotically to give two male gametes. Thus, pollen grains are shed at three-celled stage. So the next one is, so they shed the pollen grains, which has to land on stigma before they lose their viability. Because of their exine nature, the thorn-like structure in the pollen grain, that is why, because in order to stick to the surfaces, when it gets burst, when the pollen grains get released in the environment, it wants to get stuck somewhere. That is why the outermost covering is little hard and thorn-like thing, so that it can get stick onto the stigma or the female reproductive part. Okay. So the viability period of the pollen grain is variable. It depends on the environment, the temperature, and the humidity. So for example, rice, wheat, they get attached. The pollen grain get attached to the female part of the plant for around 30 minutes only. And in some, it remains in the surface for many months. That is for some members of Leguminaceae, Rosaceae, and Solanaceae. Understood? So why are they important in our study? Because they are rich in nutrients. Okay, they can be taken as food supplements. So pollen tablets, there are varieties of pollen tablets and syrups. Why? Because to increase the performance of athletes and race horses. So how are they stored? They are stored in liquid nitrogen at -196 degrees Celsius. They are used as pollen banks in crop breeding processes. So pollen grains of some plants are allergic for some people. For example, Parthenium or carrot, it is also called as carrot grass, which leads to asthma or bronchitis. So we will move on to the next part, that is Gynecium. Gynecium means the female reproductive part of the flower. So this is a female reproductive part of the flower, that is pistil, or you can also call it as carpel. The topmost part is called as stigma. This the long elongated one is style, and the basal at the base, which is attached to the thalamus, it is called as ovary. Okay, so it is a hibiscus pistil. The female reproductive part is called as pistil or carpel. So this is the hibiscus, the shoe flower pistil. So it may have a single pistil, that is monocarpellary, or more than one pistil, that is multicarpellary. There are plants which has single pistil or more than one pistil. In multicarpellary, the pistils may be fused together. In multicarpellary, the pistils may be fused together. It is called as syncarpus, or if they are free. So this is the example of syncarpus, where the pistil of papaver, they are fused together, whereas for Michelia, they are free. That is called as apocarpus. See, they are free. See this, everything is free. So this is called as apocarpus. This is syncarpus. This is apocarpus. Okay. Is it getting bombarded? Too much of information? Do you want me to get it too much of information? Right. We will stop with 2-3 slides. Okay. Don't worry. And we will revise it again. Okay. So you will understand more. So Gynecium. Gynecium matlab female reproductive part of flower, isn't it? So it has stigma. Each pistil has 3 parts. This is our flower. ये जो yellow color में जो दिख रहा है, that is the male reproductive part, or androecium you can call it as. It has anther and filament. See the anther, it is bilobed, isn't it? Anther, filament. This is the stamen part, which is the male reproductive part, and this one is the female reproductive part, which has stigma, style, pollen tube, ovary. This is the female reproductive part, which is pistil or carpel. You can call it as pistil or carpel. ये stamen है और ये pistil है, ठीक है. और ये जो है अपना leaf है, and this is one which is called as receptacle. Receptacle is the base of it. This is the green leaf. Immediate petal के नीचे जो है, that is a sepal. Okay. So stigma is what? That is the landing platform for pollen grains. As I said, when the male gets burst, when the anther gets burst, the pollen grains will transport to different environment, and some may land on the stigma, that is a female reproductive part of the flower. So this is called as a landing platform for pollen grains. Okay. Second is style, that is the elongated one. It is an elongated slender part beneath the stigma. This is the one which connects, style is the one which connects stigma and ovary. Style is the one which connects stigma and ovary. Ovary is what? The basal bulged part. The bulged part is called as ovary. Ovary के अंदर क्या है? Ovule है. ठीक है. So each pistil has three parts, that is stigma, style, and ovary. Stigma is the landing platform for pollen grains. So when the anther bursts, the pollen grains will land on stigma. तो स्टिग्मा के नीचे जो है that is style. स्टाइल के नीचे जो है the bulged part जो है that is ovary. So we will talk about ovary. Inside the ovary is the ovarian cavity. So this is the ovary. So इसका थोड़ा zoom form है ये. So ये ovary में क्या है? They are telling inside the ovary is the ovarian cavity. There is a cavity called as ovarian cavity, which is also called as locule. Locule जो है ये जो green part दिख रहा है that is the locule in which placenta is located. There is a small tissue-like covering which is called as placenta, and from the placenta, arising from the placenta are ovules. Okay. So there is one locule inside the ovary. There is the ovarian cavity or locule. Okay, उसके अंदर which is in which the placenta is located. इसके अंदर placenta है which and from the placenta, arising from the placenta are the ovules. इसके अंदर क्या है? Ovules है. Ovules is also called as megasporangiae. Ovules are also called as megasporangiae. Okay. The number of ovules in an ovary may be 1 or many. So the ovules in an ovary which are 1, they are wheat, paddy, mango, etc. And the number of ovules in an ovary which are many, those examples are papaya, watermelon, orchids. ठीक है. So the next one is ovule. Ovule is attached to the placenta by a stalk. See, in an ovary, ovule cannot be found heavy or just like that. It is attached to the placenta through something, right? So that is the funicle. Stalk जैसा एक चीज है which is attached where the ovule gets attached to the placenta. Okay, that is called as funicle. Here the funicle is like this. So the junction between the body of the ovule and the funicle is called as helium. Junction is the one. See, here it is showing very nicely in this figure. So this is the placenta they are talking about. This is the ovary wall. The locule is there here. इसमें placenta है. And funicle, here is the ovule. And ovule is attached to the placenta. Placenta is over here. And ovule is over here. And it is attached by something. Just like that, it is not standing here. It is attached to a stalk-like structure which is called as funicle. That is this. the junction between the body of the ovule, that means body of the ovule and the funicle, is helium. That is somewhere here. This is the angle which it produces. Funicle or ovary के यहाँ एक छोटा सा जगह is there. Angle which produce or the junction between the body of the ovule and the funicle is called as helium. Are you able to understand? Let me see if I have something, some better diagram. So the junction, the angle between the body of the ovule, you see the ovule, you see the funicle. So this area, ये जो angle है, that is called as helium. Each ovule has one or two protective envelope named as integuments. So the ovule has one or two protective layers. This the ovule will have one or two protective envelopes known as integuments. And except at the tip where a small opening micropyle is present. Micropyle is, you can see the opening of it is called as micropyle. Where, why this opening is there? It is for the pollen grain to enter. Okay. That is called as, where it is called as small opening is there, that is called as micropyle. And opposite to micropylar end is the chalaza, that is a basal part. Opposite to micropylar end, that means this is the opening that we saw. Okay. And opposite to this is come opposite to that. That is, this is the point. This is the point they are talking about. This is the chalasal point they are talking about. Okay. So we'll end with this slide. Okay. So don't feel bombarded. We'll revise it again. So no issues. So enclosed within the integuments is the mass of cell called as nucellus. This is the ovule. The ovule has many two or more, one or two protective envelopes called as integuments. And where is the nucellus? They're talking about enclosed within the integuments. So inside this is the nucellus. So in the picture you can see. You see we are talking about helium, funicle, micropyle is the opening, opposite to micropyle is the chalazal, and the integument of the ovule. Ovule has one or two protective envelope, that is the outer integument and inner integument. Okay. And the nucellus is somewhere inside that. Protective layer ke andar hai na? That is the nucellus. That is this area. और nucellus के अंदर है ambroicyte. Understanding? So inside the nucellus is the embryo sac, which is the female gametophyte. An ovule generally has a single embryo sac formed from a megaspore. Okay. This is the helium. Helium of funicle के बारे में हम लोगों ने क्या पढ़ा था? You will revise again. Ovule is attached to the placenta via stalk. So this is the ovule and this is the placenta. So just like that, it is the ovule is not sitting there. It is connected via something. There is some connection. That is called as funicle. So junction between the angle, ये जो angle है, junction between the body of the ovule and the funicle is called as hilum. ठीक है, जो angle जो form होता है because of ovule and the funicle is called as hilum, which is not mentioned here in the diagram, but the angle, you can just imagine the angle over here, that is called as hilum. ठीक है, the each ovule has one or two protective envelope. It has one or two protective envelopes, which is called as integuments. It has outer integument and inner integument. There is one opening, small opening, micropyle, which is present. And opposite to micropyle is the chalazial part. Chalaza part, which is basal part. Micropyle का opposite क्या है? Chalazial. ठीक है. And उसके बाद क्या आएगा? Micropyle, we talked about micropyle, chalazial, and then इंटीग्यूमेट्स आएंगे प्रोटेक्टिव लेयर और उसके अंदर है न्यूसेलस. Enclosed within the integuments, there is a mass of cells called as nucellus, which can reserve food materials. Inside the nucellus is the embryo sac, which is female gametophyte. Nucellus के अंदर embryo sac है, which has female gametophyte. ठीक है, an ovule generally has a single embryo sac formed from a megaspore. Okay, so we'll revise it again. This is we were talking about Dienesia. Dienesia is the female reproductive part of a plant. Like understanding? So we'll revise this again. Gynecium. We talked about before the previous slides. We talked about stamen. उसके दो parts है, anther and filament. Now we are going to talk about female part, that is gynecium. So gynecium को उसके अंदर क्या क्या parts है? It has stigma, style and ovary. ठीक है, stigma is the one where the pollen grains land. Style is the elongated part. The elongated part is the style, and ovary is the one which is like the basal bulge part. ठीक है. So all three together, ये जो three parts है, ये three parts is called as altogether one particular thing. We name them, that is either pistil or carpel. We name them as pistil or carpel, and each pistil, each carpel has three parts, that is stigma, style and ovary. So about ovary we were talking, isn't it? The bulged part we were talking about ovary. Inside the ovary is the ovarian locule. There is the ovarian locule over here, in which placenta is located. Arising from the placenta are the ovules. Ovules are also called as megasporangia. ठीक है, there is a locule, उसके अंदर placenta है, उसके अंदर ovules नहीं तो megasporangia है. So ovules, the number of ovules in an ovary may be one or many. Those who are one, they are wheat, paddy, mango, etc. Those ovules in an ovary which are many, which includes papaya, watermelon, orchids, etc. And अभी हम लोग ने क्या बोला? Locule, then placenta, locule के अंदर placenta, इसके अंदर ovule है, and ovule is attached just like that. Ovule is not standing, it is attached to the placenta by a Ovule is attached to the placenta by a stalk-like thing called as funicle. Understood? Funicle. So the junction between the body of the ovule and the funicle is called as hilum. ये जो angle which forms an angle, ovule और funicle के बीच का जो angle formation है, that part is called as hilum. Each ovule has one or two protective envelope that is called as integuments, a protective layer. Outer integument and inner integument, except at the opening, that is the micropyle. It has covering. The ovule has a covering, one or two protective envelope, that is integuments, except at the particular place, that is micropyle. Why the micropyle? Why there is an opening over there is because the pollen grains which gets bursted has to enter through somewhere, right? That is why there is an opening over here. That is called as micropyle. Opposite to micropylar end is the chalasa part, chalasa pole, that is called as chalasa. Okay. And enclosed with the integuments, a protective layer, outer layer, integument and inner integument. और इसके अंदर क्या है? Nucellus है. There is a mass of cell called as nucellus. And what it has, what does it contain? It contains reserved food materials. Nucellus has reserved food materials. And nucellus के अंदर क्या है? It has embryo sac. This is the embryo sac. Inside the nucellus is the embryo sac, which is also called as female gametophyte. An ovule generally has a single embryo sac formed. Okay? So what have we studied today? We studied about
male and female reproductive parts.
Yes, we did complete female part. There are some more. I have just started with the female part. It is some structure of female part I have mentioned. Okay, I haven't completed. I know it's really new words you are learning, so I thought not to bombard you guys with more information. So we will revise again so that you will remember. Okay. So a flower has two essential and two non-essential parts. दो essential part क्या है?
Anther and filament.
Androecium and Gynoecium. Androecium is a male reproductive part and Gynoecium is the female reproductive part. And which are the two non-essential parts?
Calyx and corolla.
Very good. Calyx and corolla. Okay. Calyx and corolla, the corolla is the one which attracts the pollinators. Okay. Good. So the male reproductive, that is the androecium, it is called as stamen. Stamen has two parts, that is anther and filament. Okay, this is the filament. This is the anther part. Anther part is bilobe, which means it has two lobe structure. एक लोब ऐसा है, एक लोब ऐसा है. You say liver has lobes. Similarly, anther has two lobes. That is one here, second here. So just like I said previously, we can't combine two bread. So इसके बीच में something should be there. Masala, नहीं तो jam or cheese. Something should be there to make it one. So it is through an adhesive called as connective. Connective is the one which attaches two lobes of anther. And further, each lobe has two theca, that is diathecous. Theca मतलब covering. ठीक है. So we talked about 4 microsporangia. This is anther. This is anther. This is filament where they cut. It has two lobes. One lobe, second lobe. One lobe and second lobe. Each lobe has microsporangia. In total, it has 4 microsporangia in the corners. That is, the anther is a tetragonal structure consisting of 4 microsporangia located at the corners. ठीक है. The microsporangia develop to pollen sac. Okay. So this is the microsporangiae and they are covered by 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 over here also. Similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4 layers here also. Here also 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. Microsporangia are covered by 4 layers. So those 4 layers are epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, tapetum. Epidermis is the one which is thin in nature. Endothecium is thick in nature. Middle layers are the one which makes food. Tapetum is the one who acts like gunda and snatches the food from the middle layer and gives it to the pollen grains, the young pollen grains. So the outer 3 layers give protection and help in dehiscence of anther to release the pollen. The outer 3 layers give protection and help in dehiscence, help in bursting of anther to release the pollen. Dehiscence means bursting. Patana, burst hona. That is dehiscence. Help in bursting of anther to release the pollen grain. So epidermis is outermost thin layer, epidermis outermost, endo inside, middle layer उसके भी अंदर, और मिडिल लेयर के अंदर क्या है, टेपेटम है, और उसके अंदर क्या है, they are microsporangia. So these 4 layers cover microsporangia. Okay. So tapetum is the innermost layer which gives food to the pollen grains, developing pollen grains. Cells of tapetum contain dense cytoplasm and have more than one nucleus. Okay, tapetum has dense cytoplasm and has more than one nucleus. In young anther, each microsporangium has pyrogenous tissue at the center. It consists of compactly arranged homogeneous diploid cell, sporogenous cell. There are mother microspore mother cells inside. ठीक है, tapetum के अंदर क्या है, microspore. Tapetum है is the innermost covering. उसके बाद क्या आता है, माइक्रोस्पोर मदर सेल्स. इनको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए इतने सारे layers हुआ है. So as the anther develops, each microspore or mother cell undergo meiotic division. First they do meiosis. The mother cell undergo meiosis to form microspore tetrads. Mother cell which forms microspore tetrads through what? Meiosis. Okay. Mother cell undergoes meiotic division to form microspore tetrads. ठीक है, they are the cluster of 4 cells. Microspore tetra मतलब क्या? 4 tetrads. So mother cell through meiosis it forms microspore tetrads. Then formation of microspores from a pollen mother through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. इसका नाम क्या बोलते हैं? Microsporogenesis. The formation of microspores from a pollen mother cell through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. ठीक है? There are layers, outer layers. Microsporangia को cover करने के लिए microsporangia nothing but the pollen mother cells. They are pollen mother cells which are diploid, which has 2 end. Diploid मतलब 2 end. They form tetrad. How? Through meiosis. Very important. Through meiosis, pollen mother cells form what? Microspores through meiosis. और इसके बाद after the formation of microspore tetra, it forms what? Vegetative and generative cell. Talk about vegetative and generative cell. इसके बाद जो होता है that is through mitosis. पहला meiosis होता है, उसके बाद mitosis होता है, उसके बाद भी mitosis होता है. तो starting में जो होता है that is meiosis, after that mitosis. ठीक है? So how this forms? From mother cell it forms tetrad microspore through meiosis, and after the formation of pollen tetrad spores, the cells form vegetative and generative through mitosis. That is a 2-celled stage हो जाएगा. And उसके बाद from further mitosis होने के बाद 3-celled stage हो जाता है. ठीक है? Meiosis, then again mitosis, it forms 2-stage cell. Then again mitosis होता है, it forms 3-celled stage. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then we talk about right? This we said, and as the anther matures, dehydrates, it dissociates from each other and develop into individual. एक करके pollen grains आ जाता है. Each microsporangium contains thousands of pollen grains. Microsporangia याद है ना? 4 corners पे थे. It will have thousands of, each microsporangium will have thousands of pollen grains. So they are released with the dehiscence of anther, bursting of anther. So thousands of pollen grains के बारे में, it gets burst. So we will talk about pollen grain. Pollen grain क्या है? इसमें है vegetative cell and generative cell. ठीक है? Vegetative cell is a bigger one. Generative cell is a small one. Vegetative is not the next generation. It stores food. Generative is the next generation. ठीक है? So it is generally spherical. Pollen grain is generally spherical in nature. It has 25 to 50 mm in diameter. Cytoplasm. It has cytoplasm surrounded by plasma membrane. See, छोटे-छोटे dots लिख रहा है. That is cytoplasm surrounded by plasma membrane. And pollen grain has 2 layers. Pollen grain is 2 layered, exine and intine. Exine में से thorns जैसा है, और जो थॉर्न्स नहीं है, ऐसा यू शेप्ड है, उसको क्या बोलते हैं? जर्म पोर. ठीक है. एंड दिस एक्साइन मीन्स द हार्ड आउटर लेयर इज मेड अप ऑफ sporopollen, which is highly resistant to high temperatures, strong acid, alkali, etc. Enzymes cannot degrade sporopollen. The outermost covering here is made up of sporopollen, which is highly resistant to temperature, strong acid, alkali, etc. जो U-shaped cheese apertures है, they are germ spores where sporopollen is absent. So pollen grains are preserved as fossils due to presence of sporopollen. And inside, we talked about exine. We are talking about intine. Intine is the inner wall. It has thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. Outer layer is made up of sporopollen. Inside layer is made up of, the intine is made up of cellulose and pectin. So a matured pollen grain has two cells. This is the matured one. It has two cells, vegetative and generative. Vegetative is the big and which stores food. Generative is a small and floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It is spindle shaped and dense cytoplasm and has a nucleus. So 60% angiosperms shed their pollen grains at second cell stage, and 40% at 3-cell stage. Okay, 60% shed their pollen grains at 2-cell stage, and the rest of the person shed at 3-cell stage. This is via mitosis, mitotically. They divide mitotically to give 2 male gametes at 3-cell stage. Okay. The pollen grains will land to the stigma before they lose their viability. The viability period is variable depending upon the temperature and the humidity. So the viability is 30 minutes for some cereals such as rice, wheat, and for some such as leguminous members and rosaceae or solanaceae members will have a viability of months. So what are the importance of pollen grains? Why are we studying them? Because they are rich in nutrients, will help to increase the performance of athletes and racehorses. They are in tablet and syrup forms. They are stored how? They are stored in liquid nitrogen, minus 196 degrees Celsius. So they are also, some pollen grains of some plants are allergic to some people, which will lead to asthma or bronchitis. So that is Parthenium or carrot grass. The pollen grains of some plants. Those plants are Parthenium or pollen grains, which lead to asthma or bronchitis. So this is what we studied about Androsia. And we just started with Dienesia, that is a female reproductive part, which has single pistil, or some may have more than one pistil. Pistil means this is the one which includes stigma, style, and ovary is called as pistil. So some flowers will have only single pistil, some will have double or more than that, more than one pistil. So if more than one, they will be fused together, then they are called as syncarpus, that is this. When more than one pistil, when they are fused together, that is the example of papagir. Example is papagir. And when Yes.
Ma'am, Dienesia has dropped a message saying that we have a lecture after this, so he's told you to end this lecture here.
Okay, okay, no issues, no issues. Yo, it's already 7. I'm extremely sorry. Okay, so I hope you all understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. So please do revise before the next class. Revise whatever I have taught you today and come to the next class. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, children.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
See you next week.